Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 23rd of June 2003 meeting of the Haltom City Council. I want to begin by apologizing to you. We're 14 minutes late in getting started, and there was good reason. We had conversation going on in the public briefings section of our meeting that we had a hard time getting wrapped up, and we appreciate your patience. And to those of you who are watching by way of HCTV, we welcome you. We began tonight with our invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Councilmember John Williams. If you will, please stand for both the pledge and the invocation.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day you've given us, Lord. We thank you for the many blessings that you bestowed on us. We thank you for Haltom City and the progress that's taken place in there. We pray, Lord, as we go through this meeting, that you'll give us the right minds, the right hearts to make the best decisions for what's the best for Haltom City. Pray for each and every one that's overseas, Lord, protecting our country. Pray that you'll be with them, give them your guiding hand, lead them back to us, Lord. We ask these things in thy name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item tonight is our consent agenda, and I think you're aware of what the consent agenda is. It's items considered to be self-explanatory and that will be enacted by the council in one motion. If you're looking at your agenda, we have items number 1 through 8 that comprise the consent agenda tonight. We're going to be pulling item number 1 and item number 3 for action at a later time. I'm in line for a motion at this time regarding the consent agenda. Councilmember Fowler.
Mayor White, I move for approval of the consent agenda with the corrections to be made on agenda item number 8, which is the consideration of vehicle record ordinance, to include those vehicles. The changes that are necessary would be those vehicles under 10,000 pounds to reflect a $95 rate, which is current. For use of a flatbed service would be a $125 charge. Vehicles over between 10 and 26,000 pounds would be $150 per hour of service, and vehicles over 26,000 would be a $250 per hour charge, which is similar to the ordinance of North Richland Hills. And then also, I guess you have already moved for removal of 1 and 3.
Yes, sir.
Need to reflect that.
Okay, Councilmember Avery.
That's for a second, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We do have a speaker's card on item number 8, so before the vote is taken, gentlemen and ladies, with your consent, we will call Ray Eklund forward at this time to speak on the subject of item number 8 on the tow truck. So, Mr. Eklund, if you'll come forward, give us your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Ray Eklund. I live at 2532 Oakwood Terrace here in Haltom City. I reviewed part of the record thing on the internet this last week, and I discussed with some people I know that drive records. And I was curious, it seems on page 4 of our paperwork that talks about keeping things the way they are now, where the people's cars, when they're towed, they're taken to the record service. The way I understand Fort Worth's system is they own their own record yard, the city does, and it provides a great amount of income for them because the abandoned cars and whatnot, they end up being able to sell them at auction or however they sell them. In these tight budgetary times, I thought this might be an appropriate time to put that idea forward for the city to consider whether we might want to move forward like that. Also, they have a rotating system in different sectors of Fort Worth, from my understanding, and that different record services are on there, and they rotate through the police calls, on the police calls, so that on a regular basis, there's like 5 on the east side of town, and they rotate through, and every 5th call, the guy gets to go out. It looks like a way to maybe move some more record companies or have more business here in town that might want to apply to have some of that business. And keep capitalism alive and well here in Haltom City. So that was my comment. As y'all consider this item, obviously it's pretty late in the process, but I thought those ideas needed some consideration, and maybe your expertise will come up with something. Thank you.
Councilmember Fowler and then Councilmember Williams. Were these questions or comments you need Mr. Eklund to remain at the, okay.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Fowler?
Okay. And I may steal Councilmember Williams' thunder on this. The previous council had asked two of us, Councilmember Williams and I, to look at this ordinance with the city manager and the police chief at that time, interim police chief Janes. We looked at those issues. North Richland Hills had done an impound, had been very unsuccessful at it. We looked at the ideas of the rotation, the single service. Part of the thing we looked at, or one of the benefits we looked at was, or through the request for proposal process, was to require someone to be within Haltom City, their storage impound, so that if there's a wreck or if a car's towed, that it be required that it be within the city limits of Haltom City, which would provide property taxes, and it would be a convenience for our citizens. So we did look at all the issues that you'd spoken about and took those into consideration, and felt like that after going through those things, that this was a very good ordinance. It was not only would service our citizens, but that would also protect us legally. And it's been proven, I guess, in North Richland Hills and some of the other cities that our law firm practices in also has stood the test, and so we feel like that it's a very good, sound ordinance. Part of the process will be the request for proposal, which will go out next, and there'll be a bid process that takes place, and that will be where we require some of these things to be part of the ordinance also. They'll have to meet certain requirements to do business here as a single service provider in our community.
Councilmember Williams?
Mr. Eklund, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. About 5 years ago, I had the same thoughts that you did, that we could open our own impound yard and have that money as opposed to an outside contractor. But on doing deep research on it, I found out that a lot of times the cars that we impound through the police department have to be put in a special area until the investigation is over with the impounding of the vehicle. And also, just like as recent as today, the chief planner had contacted me about a couple of cars that we'd had that code enforcement had complaints about. These two vehicles were actually hulls that were left on property when the renters moved out. With you with rental property, I know you'll understand that. And this is a losing proposition when this wrecker service has to come out and pick that vehicle up. They have to find the previous owner on it and the lien holder, contact them, keep it X amount of days, which they'll be charging storage on that, but that car will never be picked up. So that's money that, regardless if it was $10 a day or $20 a day, they'll never get that money. And then when they go to crush the car, I think they're probably around $40 a ton, if they're that much now. So it's a losing proposition. And so by changing these, is my 5 minutes up? By changing these fees in the way that they are, we feel like this would be the best served the service. If we could have an impound lot and we didn't have to pay 24/7 for someone to be there to man it, then yes, it would be. But with the manpower it takes and having the property and proper security and stuff, it's cheaper to contract that out at this time. Some other cities are turning back to that way now. But thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund. And ladies and gentlemen of the council, we have a motion and a second. If you're ready to vote, I'll call for the vote at this time. So if you will register your vote. And that passes unanimously. We will address item number 1 following item number 16. So we'll take care of that in a moment. We come now to item number 3 on the consent agenda, and I believe our fire chief, Jerry McIntyre, has a presentation to make. Following that, a comment, if you would, Mr. Torres, your recommendation based on this, and then we'll recognize Councilmember Hurley, who had asked for this to be pulled from the consent agenda. So, Chief?
Mayor, Council, back in February at our council staff retreat, we discussed the
potential of the city fire department providing ambulance service in Haltom City versus the system that we're in right now, the Area Metropolitan Ambulance Authority. At that meeting, we provided information about both systems and how they function and how we would anticipate that a city-ran system would function also. We discussed a lot of the costs, a lot of the merits of each system in that meeting. One of the issues that we brought to you during that meeting was our interlocal agreement calls for, if the city prepares or wants to exit the system, we must give all the member cities and the AMAA at least 12 months notice of our exiting of the system. That would provide that we had to give formal notice July 2003 of our intent to exit in 2004. Since that time, and I think at that meeting we brought it up, there was some discussion that the Area Metropolitan Ambulance Authority had recently granted the rural metro, the provider, a one-year extension of agreement, 1 year extension of contract, and therefore that obligated us for an additional year. We had Wayne Olson and his group study that, and that appears to be the truth now, that should we desire to exit the system, we would have to provide notice of July 2003 of this year of our intent to do so in order to exit in July of 2005 and provide our own service. I don't know if you want the 2-hour dissertation or if you want to go straight to Q&A, but we're at that point. We did not want the council to miss an opportunity to make that decision prior to July 31st, and so I can hopefully answer any questions.
Okay, before I turn the microphone over to the city manager, who will address this issue and bring his recommendation, I will ask members of the council any questions or comments for the chief at this point. Okay, there being none, Mr. Torres, you want to proceed from here?
Just a couple of comments that I'd like to add to the chief's, if I could. One, I think the most important thing tonight is that the city council be given an opportunity to make this decision. This is clearly a policy decision, something that staff alone cannot and should not make, and because there is a deadline looming ahead, we feel important that y'all have that opportunity to make the decision. And I'd also like to make a point that a decision doesn't necessarily have to be made tonight. We've got another 2 more meetings that are scheduled meetings before any kind of notice might have to be given. So there's no reason to jump into this, and this is something that we have been studying for quite some time. The present contract that we have for emergency medical services, in my opinion, really doesn't sufficiently cover the needs and doesn't give us a whole lot of versatility. Quite frankly, I think it's a contract that's not worded in our favor. So, I'm kind of struggling right now with the budget. So in the proposal that you've seen in your packet here, if we were to jump into an EMS operation in 0405, the calculation is there that it might cost us $135,000 more annually to run such a system. The next year it would decrease some, and of course these are only projections, and there's a lot of variables there that we don't really know about. With the financial condition that we're in and the struggle that we're having presently to put our budget together, it's not really the best of time to be making a decision like this right now. I don't feel comfortable making a strong decision, yes, we should take on this system ourselves, or no, we should not. Either way, I'm not comfortable. But I am comfortable in the sense that I think we have nothing to lose by putting them on notice that in 2 years we intend to get out of the system, because it opens a potential window of opportunity. And in 2 years, the economy is going to turn around. I have expectations it will. If we don't put them on notice tonight, we'll have to wait another year to do it, and then there'll be 2 more years. So basically, if we don't put them on notice by next month, we're going to push this thing off at least for 3 years, and that makes me very uncomfortable. By putting them on notice next month, I really believe that that just leaves some opportunity for us to make some decision down the line, potentially next year, and not be forced to making a decision now. I am totally confident that if we put them on notice and we chose next year, for example, to back out and not continue down the road of providing service, I am totally confident that we can get right back into the system. This company is in the business to make money, and there's no way they're going to turn us down. But if we don't put them on notice, we have to wait a whole another year, and it could be 3 years before we can provide the service ourselves. So, you know, I've heard a lot of stories about the service level that's being provided, and some of those stories are good, some of them are not so good. There are a number of things that concern me about the present ambulance operation. I'm particularly bothered by an ambulance just sitting on the corner, and the doors are open and the guy's just sitting there. I mean, that's not the way an ambulance service should be provided. And I've worked in places where we have provided the ambulance EMS service ourselves, and so I have quite a bit of knowledge about it. But it's an opportunity that we've got here, and we've got another 30, 45 days, whatever, before we have to really pull the trigger and make a decision. So I would caution you, you know, make sure that if a decision is made tonight or even next month, it is in fact the decision that we can live with for the long haul. And that's all my comments.
Questions for Mr. Torres on any comments he made? Okay. Chief, I think for the moment we are finished with our need to be asking you questions back and forth. We may need to call you back up in a moment. Thank you very much to both of you gentlemen. Mr. Hurley, we have a speaker's request card filled out. Ms. Fran Nally, the chairman of the Senior Advisory Committee, would like to address this. Would you yield to her, and then we'll come to you? Ms. Nally, I believe you have this is Ms. Ruth Ormsby, I believe. Mary Ruth Ormsby. Yes, all three. If you would identify
Fran
yourself.
left when, and Roxy, when they thought you were going to withdraw this. But the concerns that she had from the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee had to do with the fact that so many seniors out here have paid their membership into the ambulance service and have used this service. I myself at my family have twice. And you know, $55 may not seem like very much to a lot of people, but to the seniors on fixed income, that's quite a bit of money and quite a bit of savings when your average ambulance bill runs you $800 and up, if anything, you know, if anything other than just transportation to the hospital. And these were the main concerns that they wanted to address at this particular time, was to please take under consideration your senior citizens in this area that do have the membership.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ormsby. And for those of you who are watching on TV and who may be here in the audience and don't know, Ms. Ormsby is also a member of the Senior Advisory Committee, and we appreciate your comments. Councilmember Williams, your light is on, and then Councilmember Hurley.
I thought it was.
Yes, you were ahead of me.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Hurley.
It's going to take me a minute or two, Ms. Ormsby.
Okay.
You want her to be seated?
She should, probably.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't read that fast. With all due respect to Chief McIntyre and the city staff for all the hard work that's gone into this proposal, I feel that the proposal to withdraw from the Area Metropolitan Ambulance Authority at this time is ill-advised, is not timely when looking at the national and local economy, and would place an unnecessary financial burden on the taxpayers of Haltom City when the withdrawal was effected 1 or 2 years in the future. The main reasons I have heard for withdrawing are response time, cost of emergency transport, and control or management of personnel operating the ambulance service. First, the response time afforded by MedStar is currently 9 minutes for life-threatening emergencies and 11 minutes for non-emergency situations. Compliance with these limits is being met 90% or more responses, according to our records. This criteria has been met since November of 2000. Could we improve on the response time? Maybe we could, and maybe we couldn't. We always strive for perfection, but are faced with living with an imperfect world and must deal with reality. Second, the cost for emergency transports could be reduced, some say. The average cost for life-threatening transport runs around $644, and the proposal uses a figure of $425, which is comparable to what other municipalities charge, either by municipal ambulance service or to achieve subsidy from MedStar. Seniors couldn't afford $425 either. I have heard great concern about our senior citizens not being able to pay these high prices for emergency ambulance service. The first response to this is that MedStar has a membership plan whereby each household joins and is entitled to emergency transport free for the sum of $50 or $60 per year, and which covers the entire household. With the $45 savings on the senior exemptions for taxes, they can put $15 with that and buy a membership and ride for free. I personally have been a member of MedStar plan for the past 5 years and have had occasion to use their service 3 or 4 times. I have not been billed for any service above the membership fee. With our fire department staffed with paramedics and also being first responder to emergency calls, I think we have the best system available because our personnel are very professional. Coupled with MedStar providing advanced life support units, staffed with professional personnel and supervised by a competent medical director to supervise operations and protocol. Our current subsidy to MedStar costs around $69,000 per year based on our population. Haltom City cannot begin to achieve this kind of cost effectiveness when you talk about equipment outlay, personnel, medical supervision, when one advanced life support unit costs $250,000, and we would have to have 3 to begin to operate, as well as 6 additional uniformed paramedics to staff the service. You're talking over $1 million a year. Our talent for projecting economic future is not all that good. To say our economy will have recovered sufficiently in 1 or 2 years for the general fund to be able to afford to enter the ambulance business, if we should have seen the economic downturn that we're in right now with the loss of general fund revenue and talk of cutting back on staff to balance our budget. Maybe my philosophy tends to be more on the conservative side of the board, but I don't believe we ought to count our money before it's in the bank. Then we decide we want to enter a venture of this nature. We can be sure that what we're talking about, instead of gambling with our taxpayers' money and future indebtedness. There's an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I move that the resolution to withdraw from the Metropolitan Ambulance Authority be tabled indefinitely.
Okay, you've heard the motion by Council Member Hurley that item number 3 be tabled indefinitely. To have a second on that motion. Council Member Williams.
I've got a second, then I think I have the floor.
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay.
And then Council Member Averett after you're finished.
Okay, going for record, that will be for a second, Mr. Hurley. Ms. Ormsby, I appreciate you coming out and representing the Senior Center and the Senior Advisory Board. This is just one of the good reasons that we provided that board where y'all could keep us abreast of what's going on and the cost. And fortunately, we had Mr. Hurley was in on the same program. I think this is a yearly program, though, the $55 that they're paying. I would like to probably stand out there and say that if the city did ever switch over to an ambulance service and y'all had that kind of coverage, that we would try to do something to where that would cover until we got our new policy in or make some sort of an adjustment. I'm kind of like Mr. Hurley. We've used MedStar, and I don't know where they were at or where the doors were open the night that my wife thought she was having a heart attack, but we called. Ambulance response time that time was about 7 minutes Fire department was there in 3 minutes. And I'll put our fire department up against any of them. And I'd like to ask Jerry McIntyre if he'd come to the podium. I have a question that may be important. Upon using the fire department, I know at times that we administer drugs ourselves, and then the ambulances, we would already have IVs and stuff going with the ambulances got there in the past, right?
Yeah, we are one of the few departments in this area Metropolitan Ambulance Authority system that provides advanced life support first responders.
Are we still doing that?
We are still doing that.
Okay. If I fall over up here, I want your fireman up here first. Then the ambulance can haul me to the hospital. But I'm counting on your firemen to give me the first aid till they get here, because they're a glorified, taxi cab. Taxi cabs sit at the airport and wait with their doors open. These guys and Mr. Torres, I think the reason, I don't know, I've seen them sit everywhere. I've seen them sit at the parks. I've seen them sit at the 7-Eleven store. I've seen them sit at the fire station, I think, on 820. I think the way they decide where they're going to sit or about what area, I don't think they have them tied down to a particular area, but they put them where the high needs are usually at. They've got all this pretty well, where the high number of calls are, and they try to put the ambulance as close as the area. And then sometimes if that ambulance gets called out, they bring another ambulance in from somewhere else. Is that right?
That's right.
And so I think as long as Haltom City's got their fire department that we've got the best ambulance service, best first aid there. All we need is somebody to transport them once Jerry and them get them secured.
Councilmember Fowler.
Councilmember Abbott prior to me.
His light was turned off. Did
Yeah, my was just for a second, Mayor.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Quick, Chief McIntyre, if you don't mind. And this may be the city manager both. Have we, I know y'all have been working on the budget, the preliminary budget. Have we provided for any, I guess first of all, let me ask this, Chief McIntyre, do we have enough funding or do we have enough equipment currently on each unit to provide the medication necessary for a first response?
Currently, we do have all the advanced life support equipment on each first responder apparatus, which is 4 right now. You may be referring to Dr. Griswold, the medical director, in the recent past has created a 2-tiered system where first responders can apply certain drugs and certain life-saving interventions, and others are reserved for the medic units that drive the ambulances.
But you do feel comfortable with the equipment that we have currently, or is it something that, I want to know to protect our citizens as good as we can, what we can do during the budget to make sure that that takes place?
Currently, we have very sophisticated equipment and very good equipment, and we maintain it to that high level. I anticipate not in this coming budget, but the next year budget, we will change over our defibrillators and monitors, and that'll be a significant expense.
Okay. I just want to make sure that through the budget process that's a line item that we do make sure that we take care of.
Obviously, the fire department is a high priority. I mean, it's not something we're going to neglect. But as you probably know, there is some recommended downsizing within that department that's probably going to have to be recommended through this budget.
Okay, and I mean, and as we stated before, we'll look at that. At this point, I'm not in support of that at all, but I think that's where our diligence comes forth. 45 days or so ago, we were looking at laying people off, and we were able to prevent that, and hopefully we can continue to do that, especially in our emergency response type and our police and fire. But I look back and we passed a senior tax exemption, and hopefully the seniors will utilize those funds, understanding that some of that we had intended on using towards this emergency response, ambulance service, ambulatory service. We aren't able to do that now, so I hope that those citizens will take into consideration that the membership to MedStar, as Councilmember Hurley had mentioned, each senior should, or supposedly they're supposed to receive $45 in tax credits on their property taxes. Hopefully they'll utilize that towards the MedStar membership. Thank you.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, how long are we in this contract presently with the Ambulance Authority?
We've been members since 1986 in the Area Metropolitan Ambulance Authority. Currently, the total contract goes to year 2010. We are obligated to give at least 2 years' notice of our intention to exit. We can do that at each July from here on out. What's happened is in the contract between the Area Metropolitan Ambulance Authority and the provider, Rural Metro, they have a contract that allows them to win points, if you will, through the year for good performance. And that automatically qualifies them for a year's extension on that contract up to year 2010. They do them 1 year at a time. They have performed well in this last year, and most likely will receive a request and receive a contract extension.
Anything further, Councilmember Henderson?
What kind of representation do we have on this area board?
Currently, that's one thing that I think that we're a little bit shy on, is that we have one member that represents all the smaller cities with the exception of Fort Worth, and she represents, I guess, 13 cities out of the 14 that are in the system. And that's a Miss Melinda Miller, I believe, out of Forest Hill.
Forest Hill? Mm-hmm. And she's representing Haltom City's needs from Forest Hill?
And all the smaller cities in the system.
Yeah, I'm with the city manager on that. That's a one-sided contract, and if we do ever look to go past 2010 with these people, we need to have some kind of representation. They're looking after our citizens. It's something that obviously not this council, but a future council is going to have to look at. That's all, Mayor.
Councilmember Sutton.
Chief, in your study, whenever you were looking at the different options that we had and pulling out from this contract, did you look into any other cities and what they're doing with MedStar at this time?
We did look at, of course, the member cities in the MedStar contract, and and it's a pretty standard application from city to city as to how we perform in that system. A lot of cities are providing basic life support first responders. I believe Haltom City and Saginaw are the only two cities providing advanced life support first responders. And also we looked at other cities in the Northeast which we provide mutual and automatic aid with on a regular basis, and actually have mutual contracts with those cities, and most all of those departments run their own city fire department ambulances.
Did you find in your study that there was any trend of any cities leaving MedStar for any reason, or anything that would presume that there was a good reason to leave MedStar?
No, the biggest decision to, I guess, for a council to look at leaving the system is to improve the service and have local control over that system. Improve response times, improve the level of medical protocol and treatments of patients, and there are a number of good reasons. Sometimes you can provide a much greater continuity of care for the patients. I don't think anybody can beat us on customer service. So there are a lot of benefits to owning your own system.
Most of the other cities that are participants in this program are really small cities that are really not capable of even considering taking over their own system. We are the largest, I believe, by far of the
second
13.
largest, Fort Worth.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we're in a position to think about it. The others mostly are not.
Okay. Thank you.
Before I call for the vote, I want to make a comment briefly. I think most of the members of the council have expressed how they feel about this subject. We are tonight presented with a window of opportunity, and I want us to make this decision very carefully. It's unfortunate that this window of opportunity we have to take a step forward in this direction comes in the midst of significant budget concerns. I think there's a lot of merit to us going to our own ambulance service. I know 2 years ago we talked a great deal about this in our budget workshop, and I think at that time we took the first of 2 or 3 steps in that direction by authorizing the addition of, forget, 7 or 9 firefighters, something like that, over the next year. So I remember in looking at the presentation made at that time that owning our own system, we can provide quicker response at less cost, and the ambulance system can pay for itself after that first year, because of the pricing that is involved. And personally, I'd like to see the council tonight go ahead and approve a resolution authorizing the intent to withdraw. However, that's not the motion that is on the floor. I think as the city manager pointed out a little bit earlier, our withdrawing at this point is a window of opportunity. We have nothing to lose. A year from now, 2 years from now, we can get right back in. So I think the day may come when we will be taking a serious look at this. Obviously, with the budget constraints and the other concerns that have been expressed tonight, this may well not be the time for us to take a step forward. Councilmember Fowler, you have your light on?
Yes, Mayor, you made the comment. What information that you have that provides us the guarantee that we can go back in and it not cost us more? I mean, have you spoken with the ambulance authority, or?
I'm taking the city manager's.
Well, I mean, Richard, have you?
Yes, I have. The chief and I have both been down and had a meeting with the, what's his title?
Jack Eads is the executive
director
of the board.
And he said, you guys just go ahead and defect, and then if y'all decide to come back, we'll just let you in because we're good old guys?
No, but they're in the business to provide ambulance service. If any city stepped up to the plate right now and wanted ambulance service, they would be.
Oh, well, I'm sure they would, but
that's what they do. So I'm confident that they could provide the service. In another scenario, I mean, potentially, they said no. There's any number of other private ambulance providers out there that could step up to the plate also. So I'm not bothered by the thought that we might be out there exposed. It won't happen. There's providers there that are just, available and ready to take on a contract, whether it be them or someone else. So,
Chief, do you have anything to add to that comment? Question by Councilmember Fowler.
Essentially, if we gave notice that we were going to leave the system would suffer really no effect because we would still be included in that system. And if the council did make a change in mind prior to next July 31st when they extend the contract again, most likely we would have to make a drop-dead decision by then in order not to suffer some penalty of trying to get back into the system.
Well, I find it difficult that 45 days ago we're talking about letting go with employees and cutting fire and potential police officers and all that. Now we're talking about adding people, and what's the guarantee that it's going to provide? If MedStar's providing us a 90% approval rating right now, or 90% of the time they're providing what's recommended or better service, why would they? What's going to guarantee us for the next 2 years if we've already said we're not going to renew our membership? Why should they provide us as good a service?
90% response times for what? I mean, 90% of the time they respond within 9 minutes on the response time. Although 90% sounds good, I'd much rather see 90% response time meeting 3 or 4 minutes.
But what are the standards that were set forth? Who set this?
The difference between 9 minutes and 3 or 4 minutes, which is what I think we could achieve, if you were having a heart attack, 2 or 3 minutes can make all the difference in the world.
Oh, I agree. I wholeheartedly.
I'm trying to achieve a higher service level. Is the cost is it gonna be a little more? Is it a little less? We can't be absolutely precise about that, but I think the service level can be better than what it is, and you get what you pay for. I'm just sharing my thoughts. I don't. Ultimately, the decision is y'all's, and that's the reason we placed this item on the agenda tonight, so that y'all make this decision. with all the best information that we can provide. And that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Anything further, Councilmember Fowler?
Well, no, I mean, I see the merit on both sides. I was 100% for an ambulance service being done in-house until, we come in the budget crunch, and then we turn around and we have the senior tax that was some of the funding that we had projected using towards starting our own ambulatory service, and we recognize that our seniors were the largest, probably the largest end users of the ambulance service, and they turn around and overwhelmingly, set by 75%, approved a measure to reduce their taxes, which that was the funding that we had intended to use towards the ambulance service. And now we're turning around saying, well, we can or we can't. That's where I'm having difficulty understanding where we're at. The seniors have felt like that money was better, that it was better for them to use that money at their own discretion than us use it for them and provide an ambulance service or provide emergency services. So, I'm in a quandary right now. I don't want to cut our service, but then I don't want our provider that's currently meeting the requirements that are necessary, and we set those requirements forth, did we not?
I don't know how that contract was negotiated some time ago, but so I can't really say what kind of input we had in those response times being provided in that contract, because the contract that we have is the same contract that all the other entities have as well.
Well, someone negotiated that contract and determined or deemed that 9 minutes was within reason, and the
90% of the time, 9 minutes was acceptable.
Okay.
And they meet that.
And if we're providing first responder, and Chief McIntyre feels comfortable with the equipment and the manpower that we have currently, I'm going to have a difficulty defecting from this situation.
I understand. There's just so many advantages to running your own system.
Oh, I understand, and we can
control the not only the service delivery, but the rates that are set, which right now we have no say so, or very little say so in the fees that are charged by the provider. Whereas if the system was ours, we set those rates at whatever y'all deem appropriate, or whatever level needs to be set to pay for the system. So we're not only picking up the cost, you pick up the revenue stream, which is a pretty good amount of money. So.
And it's my understanding, though, tabling it indefinitely, if Council Member Hurley chose to at a later date, we still have a month. If he looks at it and chose to bring this issue back up, then it would be up to his discretion to look at that. Is that correct?
I'm thinking that tabling it indefinitely basically tells staff it's a dead issue, and at the very earliest, we consider this again this time next year.
Unless it were up to Councilmember Hurley at that time, prior to that.
Yeah, unless he wanted to bring it back sooner than that. But, yeah, there would be no need or opportunity for us to consider it again for another year at least. And
Right.
And that's another big disadvantage of this contract. We have to make a decision right now for something that's going to occur in 2 years. I mean, we don't know what the economy is going to do. In 2 years, this makeup of this council could be entirely different. Where you're making a decision, because of the way the contract is structured, you're having to make a decision right now with so many unknowns, and it's not fair. I mean, I would truly like to see that contract rewritten in such a way that doesn't give us the need to give them 2 years' notice, because that's ridiculous. There's way too many ridiculous things about it. Just a window of opportunity. That's the reason we brought it before you tonight.
Chief, I believe you were trying to get my attention a moment ago. Would you come to the microphone and tell us what you're
Cooking up?
Yeah, what you're cooking up? I think I know.
Yes, sir.
But would you,
A citizen came up and he wanted to speak to you on this subject
Sure.
tonight. He didn't know if he was too late to do that or not.
and I believe Section 2-2 of our municipal code says that presentations by citizens without prior notification, and we did not have a prior notification, shall be limited to 3 minutes, allowing for discretion by the mayor or the council to reasonably extend those limits. So Members of the council, with your consent, under the provision that I've just read, if you will come forward and give us your name and address for the record. And I would like to ask you, after you've finished, if you'll go out and get one of these yellow speakers cards, fill it out, and give it back to Chief McIntyre so we'll have a written record. So your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Scott Warnick, and I live at 3929 Wood Lane Avenue. Apologize for being out of breath. I thought your meeting was tomorrow. I was watching TV and heard y'all about MedStar. I'm a heart patient. I have 2 arteries left. I'm 48 years old, and I've written a small statement that I believe the council should understand before tabling your decision, and this will help the seniors as well. I'm a citizen of a good and beautiful city known as Haltom City, Texas. I'm here today to ask the board the following, and it is we need to have a vote for the purpose of acquiring a few ambulances for the care of our citizens which reside in our city, and the reason is this. On June 14th, 2003, I had suffered an angina problem, and 911 was notified. At approximately 10:40 p.m., at which time MedStar was notified and arrived at my home and placed an EKG lead to my left and right shoulder and to my left and right foot, which I am told by my doctor that will only check for the medical problem called tachycardia, which is a misbeat of the heart. At that time, the so-called paramedic had stated there was nothing wrong with me and my wife should take me to the hospital for further treatment, since we, MedStar, would not treat with medication nor transport me, which we explained that my cardiologist does not want me nor my wife to drive me in case I go into heart arrest. My wife and I tried to explain this to the paramedic, and also you need to use a 12 or 16 lead to get accurate readings. Since I had a major heart problems and my only dominant artery was my stented circumflex artery, which travels down the right side to the rear of my heart. And the way to see what is going on is with a 12 or 16 lead check. At that time, no more leads were placed on my body, and the paramedic pushed a button on the EKG monitor and stated, "There is your 12 lead test, and nothing is wrong with you." At that point, they required me to sign a document that I refused service so they could leave, and I said, "No, I will not sign anything unless you write in what you just told me," by having my wife take me to get checked out. And the paramedic stated it was pre-written and could not add anything, so I refused to sign. Then he told me to sign another form that releases information, at which time I did sign. This form was to release any medical or HIV test that they want to give to any doctor or other emergency personnel. My wife then took me to the hospital where the ER doctor ran a 12-lead EKG and discovered abnormalities. And I was admitted to ICU with various kinds of medication, heparin drip, nitro drip, and morphine to stop the pain. This tells me that the MedStar paramedics feel they are qualified doctors, in which case they are not doctors, but they act like they are. Even though I feel some of them are good paramedics, I feel that our paramedics in our fire department that we've paid our taxes to train are the best people that should come to my home to treat me. As I heard you speak of earlier, one of the panel members said they were a taxi service. I can believe that. I would presume to have my paramedics from my own fire department come to me, to my aid, to help me, to give me medicine if I need this medication. I don't know how else to explain it, but there are good paramedics and there are bad paramedics. This is the second time MedStar has done this to me. I'm 48 years old. I don't want to die. I want to live like some of these senior citizens live in our city. I want to see children. I want to see my child grow up. I want to see grandchildren. I realize my time is run, and I want to thank the council for it. but I wish you would reconsider tabling this, because to me, there are lives at stake here. And I don't feel that we should have these type of people here. We should have our own paramedics see our own citizens.
Thank you very much for your comments. Members of the council, any questions for the gentleman? Okay, there being none, if you don't mind, be sure to fill out one of the yellow speaker's cards that is back here and hand it to the chief. Councilmember Sutton, your light is on.
I did have a question. I understand that we have a fire department that sometimes responds with first call.
Yes, they do.
And what you're saying is that the ambulance service then was the one that were first there and not our fire department. Is that correct?
Yes, MedStar arrived first, and the first call was dispatched out of Station 1, which is located here. Usually, they've been to my home on many occasions in the past, and they've arrived within 2 to 3 minutes. I blame the construction that's going on now down Broadway.
I see.
But when MedStar had arrived, our fire department was coming around the corner. They got on the radio and stated that they can return them to their house. They're here. They'll take over.
I see. Okay.
So it did not give them time to come in.
Would you have felt more comfortable with the fire department first alert?
Yes, I would. They've
Okay.
been there before, and they've ran EKG leads on me before. They have found anomalies.
I see.
They have started an IV on me by the time MedStar ambulance had arrived.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes, I'm through. I need Jerry McIntyre. I need to address something, and appreciate you coming out and giving us your, Mr. McIntyre, something I'm sure that you'll want to address. Address the fire department and their procedure on construction. I know that they didn't go down there and find out that Wood Lane was under construction when they got there. So would you tell our citizens where they will know how?
Yeah, and without researching the call, I couldn't tell you if they were coming from another call or whether they were tied up in a different construction zone. So I'd hate to venture out as to why they were behind the ambulance. The ambulance could have been closer, but.
I want you to tell the citizens our procedures on
okay.
road construction.
Right.
I'm sorry we didn't beat the ambulance there. That's one time I've heard of.
Yeah,
But,
we're notified by Public Works through the police department each day, every day, and updated regularly about street closings and construction. We also have members of our department that are out, and they notice things that are difficult for us to traverse, so they'll call back in and we'll place those on. We also have mobile data computers in our truck with those listings on there also, so that we're aware where those closings are, so we can adjust our routes and response routes.
And one question for the gentleman. Was that this, you said on June 14th of this year?
June 14th at 10:40 p.m.
Okay. Have you filed any kind of complaints with the ambulance
Yes.
service?
I spoke to the ambulance from the intensive care unit at North Hills Hospital on Sunday. They told me somebody would call me. They never did. I then called Wednesday when I was released Tuesday night. Nobody called me. So then I called, I believe, Friday evening around 6:30, and they asked me who I was, and I know I could get in trouble for saying who I was. It had nothing to do with the law or the fire department. That was something else in order to get some type of response. They then finally responded to me yesterday and then again this morning that they would check on it. And that's the only response I got. This is the second time that this has happened to me, though, where somebody has diagnosed me. And I deal a lot with problems. I know my body as well as you know your own body. If you're sick, you know what's wrong. And I try to treat myself with self-medication that I'm given by my doctors. And when it doesn't work, I have to rely on 911. I have to rely on MedStar. I prefer to rely on my own fire department because I've met a lot of the firemen, I've met a lot of the firemen paramedics or fire personnel if we have women in the fire department. The point is they've been there all the time for me, they've been there for my family. MedStar comes, they'll come in and they'll hook you up and they're ready to make their diagnosis. And it really threw me. I've been out of the hospital now 4 days. I'm waiting to go to Medical City in Dallas for a heart puncture, what they call laser. operation where they punch holes in your heart. So it'll grow arteries and veins so I can sustain a little longer life.
Okay.
Anything further?
I think probably one of the things we may look into, I know we're talking about tabling this for 2 years or coming back to it, but regardless, even if we do that and give a 2-year notice to get out, you still got a problem today. That's not gonna, if we go through this, it's not gonna help your problem today. And I'm concerned about between you and the next 2 years getting this fixed.
Well, yes, I agree with you, sir.
Someone, I don't know who needs to get with him, but somebody needs to get with MedStar and bring this to their attention. And, we're paying for the service. They need to be there. They need to be on time. And they need to have the right people. It sounds to me like they have a personnel problem.
Okay.
And we have that ourselves right here in our own city, and it can be corrected.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, sir.
My point is this. I would prefer my paramedics, because when I told my wife, I said, next time we have to call 911 if I can't control my pain, because doctors will not prescribe morphine to people to take home. But if I
Right.
cannot prescribe my pain or control my pain, and I have to get to an emergency room, I told my wife, next time you call 911, tell them don't transfer you to MedStar like they do now. They never used to do that. They used to contact the fire department, and we can hear sirens across town. They were on their way, and they were always there first, always within 3 minutes' time, from Station 1, which is right across the street from us here, to where I live at Beach and Wood Lane. They were always there, and they're always there for me. They were considerate. They understood what was going on. They had compassion for the people here in this city.
Sir, we appreciate your comments very much, and we've listened intently. I hope you've picked that up as you've been speaking. We thank you for your comments. Councilmember Hurley has a question, I think, or comment, and then I'm going to call for the vote.
I'd like to make a comment. I think that you may have misunderstood because I rank our fire department above MedStar. I've had occasion to use them several times, and I think they're very good, they're very professional, and they're very quick. What I'm saying is that we still have fire department as a first responder, and we have the best of two systems because whenever the ambulance gets there, then they do the transport on an advanced life support unit.
Why?
So you're getting the attention of our paramedics in the fire department at this time.
Why, sir, then why would the MedStar paramedics arrive at my home, Haltom City Fire Department, come around the corner from Beach Street onto Wood Lane, just be 50 yards from my house, they get on their radio and say, we're here, we're handling it, you can go back to your house now? Why would they turn our paramedics away?
I can't explain that. I've been on the receiving end several times, and our fire department was there first, and within 2 to 3 minutes, and then the ambulance was right behind them. They worked together as a team. If you have a problem with MedStar personnel, our city administration needs to get a hold of MedStar and make them live up to their contract. If it's attitude, they need to adjust their attitude. I think we can handle that.
Okay, I'm ready now to, thank you, gentlemen. Ready to call for the vote. Councilmember Hurley, without reading that whole statement again, would you summarize the motion we have on the floor that we're about to vote on?
I move that we table this resolution to withdraw from the Metropolitan Ambulance System indefinitely.
Okay, the motion and the second is to table indefinitely. If you will register your vote, I will display it at this time. And that passes by unanimous vote. We've been here just about an hour. We have next on the agenda the Visitor Citizens Forum, and I have only one speaker's card tonight. And I think after we do that, we've got a couple of announcements to make, and then we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute break. This time, the Visitor Citizens Forum is set aside for any person having business before the council that's not really scheduled on the agenda to have an opportunity to speak to the council. The comments that are made during this time must be directed toward the presiding officer and not to any individual council member or staff. The person speaking must limit comments to the subject matter listed on the card and no personal attacks toward any individual. 5-minute time limit will be granted. Mr. Ray Eklund, if you would, you have 5 minutes on the subject of free speech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I appreciate
If you would give us your address just again for the record, we know.
My name is Ray Eklund. I live at 2532 Oakwood Terrace here in Haltom City. I want to tell you that I sincerely appreciate the opportunity that I have as a citizen to come before you and speak tonight on any subject. And tonight's subject, I've asked to speak about freedom of speech, and it's particularly important to me. It's been important to me for a long time. I had the opportunity as a young man to serve my country. I had an opportunity to go to London, go to Hyde Park and watch the Speaker's Corner and watch free speech in that forum. I remember when Haltom City first established the Speaker's Forum not too many years back, and I truly appreciate it. I hope the other citizens that use this appreciate it, and everybody at home gets the value from that. Some values that have served by protecting free speech, we find the discovery of truth. The value was first suggested by Milton, who suggested that when truth and falsehoods are allowed to freely grapple, truth will win out. Another value is the facilitating participation by citizens in the political decision-making process. As elected officials and concerned citizens here tonight, we all feel that that part of democracy is very, very important, and we enjoy that. Our elections are all about that. Another value is creating a more adaptable and stable community. It gives the people a chance to come down here and let their feelings out rather than take possibly some violence or the other options. It assures individual self-fulfillment. People come down here and have the opportunity to express themselves and find other people that agree with them or maybe disagree with them and have an opportunity to discuss the issues that face us here in our city. It also is an opportunity to check the abuse of government power. You know, I've been in this audience going on 10 years, sitting there watching these meetings, right? And I've seen citizens take on this government, and that's an important part of government. Right? I think the important part of free speech is to promote tolerance. Right? It gives us an opportunity to hear the other side, to hear another view, to hear something we didn't already know, and maybe learn something. I think tolerance is important. It's an important aspect of our community and something we should continue to grow on. Creating a more robust and interesting community. Right? I liked hearing about the lady last week and the bamboo problem. You know, it wasn't my problem, but I mean, it was an interesting problem, and I certainly understood her position. Lastly, the First Amendment tells us Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund. We move now to the announcements and events. Mr. Torres, I believe there are a couple of items that you and I had talked about. Councilmember Williams.
I got someone he gets through.
Okay. Mr. Torres, I believe you have a couple of people you may introduce that will address a couple of things you believe it's important for the people of Haltom City to know about at this time.
First of all, Mayor, I'd like to invite Mr. Ken Burton, our Chief of Police, up here. He's going to talk a little bit about the amnesty program that's currently ongoing in our municipal court. And
thank you, Mayor, Council, Mr. Torres. I need to give credit where credit's due. The gentleman that had this idea is our own Judge Knapp. And what the municipal court and the police department and the municipal court judge have been working together on here is an amnesty program. Citizens who have outstanding warrants, and just to give you a number, there's about $4 million in outstanding warrants, Class C warrants in Haltom City. In an effort to get these cleared up, the judge is granting an amnesty period that will extend from July 1st, 2003 through July 31st, 2003. Any citizen that has an outstanding municipal court warrant that comes in voluntarily, this isn't somebody that gets arrested out there, but somebody that comes in voluntarily, can come to the municipal court during normal business hours and get a $40 discount on whatever it is they owe the city as a result of that warrant. The judge will also discuss opportunities for them to do community service. The judge will set up payments plans with them if a citizen needs that. And what we're hoping is that we can significantly reduce the amount of outstanding warrants that we currently have on the books. We're releasing a news release today, letting people in the media know that, and we're hoping that they will help us. And if you know of somebody that has a warrant, let them know it's the best time in the world to get it taken care of is during the month of July. And I'll answer any questions anyone has.
I don't see any lights come on. Thank you, Chief.
Thank
Mr. Torres, the second.
One other item that is really an update on another ongoing program we have, and Mr. James Pliska, our city planner, is going to talk to you about our clean sweep and the successes we've had today.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, citizens of Haltom City. I'd like to announce that the Code Compliance Division has completed its first district of Clean Sweep 2003. As you know, we initiated this program with the Great American Cleanup in April, and we had a varied PR campaign to notify the residents of this. Staff entered a 12-block area northwest of City Hall. They entered into the neighborhood to notify residents of code violations which they saw up and down the street as they entered into the block areas. We used a two-part door hanger during this situation. And in this 12-block area, we noticed 61 violations, in which these violations included brush and limbs, high grass, inoperable autos, old lumber, appliances, tires, and parking on grass. With the notice, this resident was allowed 10 days to abate the situation, and out of that 10 days, we got 4 out of 6 of the brush and limbs violations abated. 6 out of 11 were abated on high grass. 6 out of 14 inoperable autos were abated within a 10-day period, and 50% abatement on old lumber, appliances, and tires. I wish to announce that with the second 10-day period, we had an additional 30% abatement. So a good overall success of about 70–80% of all these violations in this 12-block area. We will enter this week into the next district. This will be southwest of City Hall, and again will be about a 12 to 15 block area.
Thank you, Mr. Pliska. And that's my neighborhood you're going to be in, so welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Williams.
Better mow your yard. It was mowed when I went by there. They look pretty good. Celebrate the 4th of July, Friday, July the 4th with Haltom City. Concerts in the Park series continues. We'll have White House Harmony. It's a Texas bluegrass band. They'll be there at 11:30 a.m. Haltom Road Park. Bring your picnic, relax, and enjoy bluegrass music. Also, later that afternoon, don't miss Northeast Family 4th of July celebration at the Birdville Fine Arts Athletic Complex. That's 9200 Mid-Cities Boulevard, 6 to 10 p.m. There'll be fireworks, classic car show, children's entertainment, performance by Eddie Coker in Emerald City. The best part about both of those, anybody can afford them. They're free to the public. Also, the employees can give the gift of life for Haltom City if they'd like. That will be Tuesday, July the 1st, in the parking lot at the library at 3201 Friendly Lane. It'll be 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Names of the employees who donate blood will be entered into a drawing for a day off with pay. There's 3 available days off with pay, so any employee that does that, if you get your name drawn, you get a day off with pay. So if you have any questions, call 222-7800, area code 817. And with that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Any other announcements or events? There being none, it looks like it's 8 minutes till 9. If you can, let's return and we'll begin the next session at 9 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, the council meeting is back in session. We come now to item number 9. That is a public hearing. Mr. Pliska, I believe, is going to introduce item number 9. Mr. Pliska, we have introduced item number 9, and we're waiting for the gentleman to introduce that to us, please. I wasn't aware he wasn't in here.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you, Mayor. This is Z002-03, public hearing on ordinance amending Chapter 86, Streets, Sidewalks, and Drainage of the Haltom City Code of Ordinances, providing for payment of cash in lieu of sidewalk installation, providing for the creation of the Safe Pathways Program Fund for the administration of funds collected in lieu of sidewalk installation, and providing for a refund of such funds if not timely expended. The corresponding ordinance is O 2003-011-15, consideration and/or action on ordinance number O 2003-0115, amending Chapter 86, Streets, Sidewalks, and Drainage of the Haltom City Code of Ordinances, providing for payment in cash or payment of cash in lieu of sidewalk installation, providing for the creation of Safe Pathways Program Fund for the administration of funds collected in lieu of sidewalk installation, and providing for a refund of such funds if not timely expended, and this is the first reading. The amendment is being requested to assure that the City of Haltom City is provided with the sidewalks during new construction, redevelopment, or pay fees for future construction of sidewalks. The amendment will update the City of Haltom City's Code of Ordinances. This ordinance amendment is a result of the P&Z Commission workshop of April 22nd, 2003, discussion and recommendation on a linear foot assessment, the creation of a sidewalk installation program, and a refund provision are in the accompanying ordinance. At their meeting on May 27, 2003, the P&Z Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the amendment changing the City of Haltom City's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 86, Streets, Sidewalks, and Drainage.
Okay, before I open the public hearing, ladies and gentlemen of the council, any questions for Mr. Pliska? Councilmember Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Pliska. First of all, appreciate the hard work that the P&Z. I know that this is something that's been kicked around for probably 2 to 5 years. I know for 2 years anyway. Question: where did the $15 per linear foot come from?
The $15 assessment was discussed with the engineering department. We had called a consulting engineering group that the city uses and determined that a 4-foot sidewalk was $14 and change, and a 5-foot sidewalk was $16 and change. So the P&Z, when given these figures, decided on a $15 a foot linear assessment as an average between the two.
Okay. Second of all, I didn't read that there's a provision for amendment to this on an annual basis where it can be reviewed. Did I overlook something in this?
It should be reviewed on an annual basis, and then this assessment possibly either raised or lowered with our fee assessment ordinance.
Is that part of this? Did I overlook it in this ordinance where it states that it would be reviewed, or was that through?
It will become a part of the fee assessment after the passage of this ordinance, due to the fact that it is part of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Haltom City.
The fee schedule where we
Correct.
consolidated all of our
Correct.
fees that will come before the council during each budget process.
So on an annual.
That'll give it the opportunity for review. But
Okay.
I think you're right, it does not address that specifically in here.
Okay. And I guess from being around the business, I know that y'all looked at it from that standpoint, from an engineering standpoint. I just feel like that might be the reason, and the intent for this was to, if someone was going to ask for a variance, to make it reasonable. You know, if you go in a neighborhood and someone redevelops a one lot, or let's say a burned out home, and it's a neighborhood that has no sidewalks at all, if it gets to where it's the point where it's cost prohibitive for them to ask for the variance or pay the funds in lieu of, if it costs more to pay the funds versus put the sidewalk in, they're going to put a sidewalk in, and it's going to go to nowhere if it's in an existing neighborhood. So I think the intent of this was to provide an opportunity for those that didn't want to do it to have a fund or a mechanism that would allow them other than the variance, and us just
That is correct, and that is what the commission considered when they met at their special meeting, and also when we passed this ordinance amendment during their discussions. That's why they wished to go ahead and stick with the $15 assessment. They realized that in some cases, you might have a developer that could put it in a lot cheaper, but then if given some sort of problem with the street, some sort of problem with the particular lot, or given the fact that he just didn't want to really construct the sidewalk, it would give him the opportunity then to kick into the fund system.
Okay. I have, assuming that that the city manager's correct, that we look at this or have that it's provided. If not, I'd like to see that us maybe consider writing that in, that this could go up for annual review through the fee schedule process. Or if not, if it need to be added to the ordinance, I would like to see that be considered. And I feel like more along the lines of about a $12 per linear foot cost would be more in lines what I would think would be reasonable. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Sutton, and then Councilmember Williams, and then I'll open the public hearing after Councilmember Williams finishes.
I really concur with Councilmember Fowler's assessment of that fee. And also, I just wanted to state that I'm sure that all the council members appreciate moving ahead on this policy and beginning to make some moves to trying to define a sidewalk policy. We appreciate that. The only other thing now that Councilmember Fowler has covered the $15 assessment is the 2-mile radius. What mechanism do you propose to have in place to be able to determine what is a 2-mile radius? And to me, that seems almost unworkable, but maybe you have a plan for how to implement that policy.
That problem was discussed when the ordinance was initially submitted. The attorney who put this together did not realize that we also have single lot subdivisions. In mind, he was thinking of multiple lot subdivisions. And there was a contiguous type information there that the funds had to be expended within a mile of the subdivision or part of a continuation of that subdivision. Well, we're doing majority or one lot subdivisions, and therefore there is no continuation factor for that sidewalk. And P&Z felt like 1 mile radius wasn't extensive enough to catch a majority of the schools or parks within the city, so they opted for a 2 mile radius from the property line of that subdivision.
Okay, I understand that. How would, practically speaking, would that just be a radius on a map that you would draw out?
It would be like we do a 200-foot notice for our property owner notifications and zoning, or for public hearings. It would be from the corner of that property.
The corner of the property,
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
Thank you. James, I'm reading on here that it says, permit property owners to make a payment in cash in lieu of sidewalk installation where sidewalk installation is deemed unnecessary by the city council. A good example, the Winter Schnitzel and Denton Highway has a lovely sidewalk that goes to nowhere. Starts at one end of the property and goes to the other end, and there's nothing but green land both ways, going both ways. This council in the last 3 or 4 years has thrown this up numerous times, whether or not the sidewalks were needed, which side of the street were they on, did we want them, did we not want them. To take a person where sidewalks really not deemed necessary and make them pay for a sidewalk that they're not going to have, for that money to go somewhere else, I don't, deem necessary. If a guy's the last piece of property on the street and the street's a dead end and it's not ever going to develop, and he doesn't want a sidewalk, but then he has to pay $15 a foot for a sidewalk to go somewhere else, the average intelligent individual is going to go ahead and put that sidewalk in itself to have it. I'm kind of like Mr. Fowler. I think $15 is too high. I think probably $12 is too high. If you get in with $12 or $15, you might as well go ahead and put the sidewalk in. And I don't know if the word's extortion or what it is, you know, you can pay money and not put a sidewalk in. You know, how are we ever going to get uniform in Haltom City, and how, you know, there's some areas where the sidewalks aren't needed, some industrial areas and stuff. But in the residential areas where they are needed, where the children are walking back and forth to school and the citizens are doing their exercising, I think in the neighborhoods the sidewalks need to be there in the residential neighborhoods, but a lot of the commercial and the industrial, you know, are mainly taken up by parking lots, so there's already a sidewalk there. It irritates me to go down Denton Highway and see where the American Disabilities, doesn't aggravate me the American Disabilities, but they put in sidewalk entrances at every intersection by law. And then once they get up top of that ramp, there's nothing there. You know, there's no sidewalk. And so if the government's going to make us put sidewalk entrances at the end of each street corner, how are we going to let somebody pay money not to put a sidewalk in between, is what I'm asking. You know, I don't see I can see taking the money from, you know, from these people and putting somewhere else, but that, you know, what are you really accomplishing other than just saving someone else the money from having to put that sidewalk in?
P&Z
Explain it to
discussed
me.
this. You're given two options: build the sidewalk, pay into the fund, therefore creating no gray area. The development ordinance calls for the construction of the sidewalk. The code of ordinances allowed for the variance to that. Through this process, you're taking away that variance process, and you're creating no gray area. You pay into the fund, or you build the sidewalk.
Okay. I understand that, but I still just don't understand, you know, paying in and not putting a sidewalk. You know, you're rocking along there in your wheelchair, you're on good stuff, then all of a sudden you're on dirt and you're back, you know, it doesn't make sense to me.
No, the development ordinance is just strictly looking at, particularly here lately, we've been looking at one-lot subdivisions and not a total subdivision where
Right.
that continuity would exist. And a perfect example is the plat we passed today on the consent agenda. That is a one-lot subdivision. The development ordinance requires that sidewalks as well as curb and gutter and all the other infrastructure development demands that are put in there for the ordinance be put in by the developer. It was with the code of ordinances, that variance, we saw a lot of people coming for that relief for no reason at all. And P&Z was ready to get rid of that gray area and make it such that the developer either puts it in or pays into the fund.
Okay, thank you. No further.
Anything further? Councilmember Sutton?
Yeah, just a question on the, a question on the purpose here. One word that I'm interested in, the definition, redevelopment. During new construction, redevelopment. Would redevelopment encompass replatting, or what would that be?
That's a very good point. Redevelopment would encompass if I have a house and it's an older type house, and I'm going to remodel the house such that I'm expending more proceeds greater than 51% of the appraised value, then that would trigger that redevelopment factor, and I would then need to put in the sidewalk.
So is there a legal definition for redevelopment somewhere?
There is in the development ordinance.
Development ordinance, okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Since
Thanks.
this is a public hearing, I'll open the public hearing at this time to anyone in the audience who wishes to speak either for or against this Safe Pathway Program Fund that's been under discussion. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak either for or against this ordinance? Okay, there being none, I close the public hearing and we move to the corresponding ordinance. I'm in line for a motion regarding the disposition of item number 9. Councilmember Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move for approval. Move for approval of ordinance numbered 0-2003-011-15 to approve on first reading with amendment to it to the fee to be set at a rate of $10 per linear foot and be up for annual review through the fee, and if we need to add that into this ordinance, up for annual review through the fee and ordinance schedule.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Councilmember Sutton?
That's for a second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, if you will register your vote, I will display it. And it passes with 2 dissenting votes. We move now to item number 10, and Mr. Pliska, I believe this is your item to introduce as well. This too is a public hearing.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is item Z003-03, public hearing on an ordinance amending ordinance number O2002-03215, zoning ordinance of the City of Haltom City, Texas, codified as Appendix B to the Haltom City Code 1998 by amending the uses allowed in the zoning district C3 to eliminate lumber yards as a use in this district and placing this use in the C4 zoning district. Corresponding ordinance is ordinance number O2003-012-15, consideration and/or action on ordinance number O2003-01215, amending ordinance number O2002-03215, zoning ordinance of the City of Haltom City, Texas, codified as Appendix B to the City of Haltom City Code 1998 by amending the uses allowed in zoning district C3 to eliminate lumber yards as a use in this district and placing this use in the C4 zoning district, and this is the first reading of said ordinance. The amendment is being requested to change the uses in Section 9 Matrix of Uses to remove lumberyard as a use in the C3 commercial district and place the lumberyard use in the C4 commercial district. It is felt by the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission that the lumberyard use is too intense a use for the C3 commercial district, and the Commission has asked that it be placed in the C4 commercial district. At their meeting on May 27, 2003, the P&Z Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the amendment to ordinance number O2002-03215, zoning ordinance, by moving the lumberyard use from the C3 commercial district to the C4 commercial district.
Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Pliska to clarify what is being proposed? Councilmember Williams.
Mr. Pliska, I ask you as pre-council, I want to do it for the benefit of the people in the audience and TV. We're talking about a property that could be a Lowe's, Home Depot, something of that nature, right? Or it could be a little
That
mom
is
and
correct.
could be a little mom and pop.
Retail establishment that would be storage of lumber or sale of lumber and building material.
My concern, we have an economic development department right now that's working very hard trying to bring businesses into Haltom City. We don't have any C4s available right now, do we?
No, not of any substantial acreage that would allow for that type of use.
Does that cut our throat on that, or?
It would provide that any type of use such as that would come under approval by the Planning and Zoning and the City Council to do the zoning change from possibly C2 or C3 to the heavier C4.
Could I address our EDC developer? And
Absolutely.
Mr. Kent Flynn's with us tonight. And as he walks up here, he's Kent Flynn. He's with our economic development, and he's the one that we're all hammering at to bring businesses to Haltom City. And I want to know how this is going to affect us in possibly bringing something of that nature to the city.
The C3, of course, is more prolific throughout the city, so any potential purchaser, looking at a C3 wouldn't be faced with a zoning case. So, yes, you are looking at a zoning case, as I understand it, right, James? Doesn't mean that it's going to discourage potential users. It just means additional process that he has to go through.
So we're just talking about a little bit of cost and a little bit of time.
Right.
But we could still market our M1 and M2 and C3 properties to a large lumber company
Right.
of that nature. Okay, so you don't believe it would hamper us that much? No. Okay, thank you.
Okay, since this is a public hearing, I open the public hearing at this time to allow
Pick up the phone and call an outgoing member and let them know that they're not going to be on there and have some discussion on it.
Item number 15 has been removed. Councilmember Williams introduced that. Any comments, questions from other members of the council regarding item number 15? There being none, we move now to item number 1. This is the minutes from the previous meeting. Councilmember Averett asked this to be pulled from the consent agenda and be addressed at this time. So, Councilmember Averett, I'm The mic is yours to address this issue.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. The reason I asked for this to be removed was during the last council meeting, the section of the agenda where it was reserved for board appointments. One of the appointments that was made at that time, after I had voted to approve that ratification by someone who was watching our council meeting via the HCTV the following day, made me aware that one of the appointments was a relative of a council member. And I was going to see what our charter, I believe there's a stipulation or nepotism that addresses that, and I was going to see what if we could get a clarification on that.
10.02.
10.02, yes.
Would like for me to address that?
If you don't mind, Wayne.
Let me read the provision in the charter regarding nepotism, section 10.02 of the charter. No person related within the second degree by affinity or within the third degree by consanguinity to the mayor or to any member of the city council or to the city manager shall be appointed to any office, position, clerkship, or service of the city.
Okay, thank you. Because this individual is a relative of Councilmember Sutton's, if you could, sir, we're talking about Darren Hudson. If you could explain to the audience and to this panel here his relation to yourself.
Sure. Darren Hudson was an appointment of the mayor's, I believe. And Darren Hudson does bear relation to my wife by the 5th degree of consanguinity. So it is, believe me, I would need a chart this big to show the relationship there. But he is the 5th degree of consanguinity to my wife.
Councilmember Averett, I did get your email. I've had trouble with my computer, but I did get your email. And since this is my appointment, I would like to address that if I could. Your email to me said, Mayor, I'm not sure if you're aware, but your recent appointment of Darren Hudson as an alternate to the ZBA is in violation of section 10.02 nepotism of our city charter. It is my understanding that Mr. Hudson is a cousin of Councilmember Sutton and therefore is ineligible to serve. You may want to revisit this issue. Well, I did my homework, and in talking with the two gentlemen involved, here's the relation. Councilmember Sutton's wife's father's half-sister's daughter is married. Her husband is Darren Hudson's brother. That's 6 degrees of affinity, not 5 degrees of consanguinity away from Jim, but it's 6 degrees of affinity. And so that's 3 times as many degrees as there needed to be. But it's Jim Sutton's wife's father's half-sister's daughter is married. Her husband is Darren Hudson's brother. So that's when you chart it out. Okay. So that appointment is valid and stands within the framework of this nepotism provision. Councilmember Fowler?
Yeah, would you mind putting that on a chart for me? I'm just kidding you, Mayor.
Got it.
Councilmember Williams.
I was just wondering if Mr. Sutton could bring his PowerPoint out, maybe we could put it up on the board and everybody could watch it.
That's the way I would have liked to have done it.
Remember, Councilmember Sutton's wife's father's half-sister's daughter is married. Her husband is Darren Hudson's brother. See? Say that 5 times in quick succession. Okay. Were there further concerns on
No, there wasn't, Mayor. In fact, when that was brought to my attention, I felt because it was your appointment that you may want to revisit that issue. I wasn't sure if you were aware.
I was at the time I made the appointment. I didn't know the half sisters, cousins, all of that that type thing, but I knew it was outside the second degree of affinity, which came into play here. I do appreciate you calling this to our attention because it is important for the mayor and everybody else to follow the rules. And if we do have a problem, let's get it early and move forward. If there isn't anything further on that, we do need a motion to accept the minutes. So if you would, please.
Well, so I make a motion we accept the minutes, and I believe there were some changes made in pre-council, and that's to reflect those.
Okay, have a motion. Councilmember Sutton.
That's for a second?
Councilmember Fowler. Okay.
That's for second.
All right, if you will, display your vote. And that passes by unanimous vote. We come now to the boards and commissions. I have one resignation. One of my planning and zoning alternates, Ms. Susan Hernandez, is expecting her third child, and she and her husband feel like that they've got about all they can handle at the moment. She said to tell you she's enjoyed immensely serving on this board. Maybe in the future she'll be able to do that again. I would like to ask you at this time to ratify the resignation of Susan Hernandez from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that is by unanimous vote. Also, were there other resignations? Okay, we come now to the appointment and reappointment, and the council has a number of at-large appointments to be made. One of the areas in the past has been the Crime Control and Prevention Board, and before we make any appointments to that, which are made by the council at large, we need to consult with our attorney about some recent legal rulings in regard to that, so we will not take any action tonight at this point on the at-large appointments to the Crime Control and Prevention Board. But I had asked Mayor Pro Tem Hurley if he would to provide leadership on the council and to bring us some recommendations tonight on the other appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. I submit for the council's approval the reappointment of Councilmember Averitt and Henderson to the Audit Committee and the new Councilmember Sutton.
Do we want to take action on these in blocks, or do we want to take action on all of them at once?
Let's take them on each one.
One at a time? Okay, if you would vote.
Each committee.
Okay. Vote for ratification, please. Okay, we have, that carries. Next, please.
Next is I submit for the Animal Advisory Committee, the reappointment of Dr. William C. Anderson, Scott Morrow, and Nancy Watkins, with the new appointment of David Everett as council liaison.
Okay, if you would, vote regarding your wishes concerning ratification. All right. Next.
The Planning and Zoning Commission, for council liaison, Councilmember Diane Branson.
Okay. If you would, register your vote in that regard.
Next, for the Zoning Board of Adjustment, for council liaison, Jim Sutton.
Okay, and your vote, or okay. And we have the Economic Development Corporation that is not to be appointed until October.
They will not come up for reappointment until October.
Okay.
So that's all we have tonight, except for the Crime Control Prevention District, which we can't discuss till after we're advised.
Okay. Thank you, Council Member and Mayor Pro Tem Hurley, for your leadership in this area. These are very important appointments, and we do appreciate each person who has volunteered. Council Member Branson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two board appointments tonight. To the Crime Prevention Board, Clay Cavazos, 4187 Goodnight Circle, and to the Sexually Oriented Board of Appeal, thank you, Gay Klein, 3424 Tommy Watkins.
Okay, you've heard these two nominations. If you will, vote your desires regarding ratification. And that passes by unanimous vote. And I do have two appointments to make tonight of two very qualified individuals who will do a good job for Haltom City. To the Fire Services Board, Warren Davenport, and the Planning and Zoning alternate, Helen Harris. So if you would express, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't see your light.
I didn't have it on. Can we vote on those separately, please?
We can vote on them separately. We'll vote first of all on Warren Davenport to the Fire Services Board. Okay. And then the Planning and Zoning alternate, Helen Harris, if you will, indicate your desire for ratification of this nomination. Okay, that passes. Okay, I think we have covered everything on the agenda and except the matter of the attendance requirements, which is not an issue tonight. We will move now into closed session as authorized by section 551.071, .072, .074, and any action taken will come back into open session. One, two, three. Our next council meeting will be out here by 9 o'clock.
I hope so. We're getting there. We got 4.
Got to have one more.
Anybody gets the doorway.
Okay, the council is called back into open session following our executive session. There's no action to be taken on any item discussed in executive session. That being the case, we stand adjourned.
Good job.